the Kohen Gadol distinguished himself from other Kohanim in that he had a number of special garments that he wore when involved in the avodah of the Beit HaMikdash. One of those garments was the Choshen, unto which were attached 12 gemstones, and on the 12 gemstones were engraved the names of the 12 Shvatim. The actual material into which the gemstones were set was double in size to that required by the gemstones. The second half doubled back and formed a kind of a pocket. Into the pocket of the Choshen, Moshe inserted the Urim v'Tumim. In the words of the Chumash, "V'natata el hachoshen ha'mishpat et ha'urim ve'et ha'tumim," there is debate amongst the scholars as to what exactly the Urim v'Tumim was. Rashi offers the following definition: Hu ketav shem ha'meforash. It was a document, possibly parchment, upon which God's very special name, the Shem HaMeforash, was written, Shehayanotno beto kaflei hachoshen, that was inserted into the fold, the envelope, the pocket of the Choshen. And Rashi goes on to provide details about the role of the Urim v'Tumim, She'al yada hu meir dvarav, for by means of the Urim v'Tumim, the Choshen would illuminate, meir, linked to or, linked to Urim, its words, umetamam, connected to Tumim, et dvarav, and bring perfection to its words. In other words, the Choshen was a form of an oracle which Moshe used, or the Kohen Gadol used, to consult with and receive responses as to how the nation was to conduct themselves. The pasuk then goes on to state, "V'hayu al leiv Aharon," the Choshen was to be placed upon the heart of Aharon, va'o lifnei Hashem, whenever he came before God, as part of the avodah, it was to be lifnei Hashem tamid, before Hashem constantly. To which Rashi makes the following observation, Uba Mikdash Sheni Haya Choshen. In the Bet HaMikdash number 2, there was the Choshen, Aval Oto Hashem, the Urim v'Tumim containing the Shem HaMeforash, Lo Haya B'tocho, was not placed into the Choshen. In all probability, prior to the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash number 1, it was one of the objects that were hidden away, never to be found. So what we see from this Rashi is a clear distinction between Bet HaMikdash number 1 and Bet HaMikdash number 2 in terms of spirituality. In Bet HaMikdash number 1, there was the presence of God reflected in the Urim v'Tumim. This was absent in Bet HaMikdash number 2. Which brings us to question number 7, Rashi's assertion that the two Batei HaMikdash were destroyed on account of the fact that they were held as collateral by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The definition of collateral is a security pledged by an individual to guarantee the repayment of a loan. Where I live, as of 2012, the average house can be bought for about $1 million. Most people do not have $1 million to pay for the house immediately. Therefore, they'll go to a lending institution and ask them for the $1 million. The $1 million is then handed over to the original owner of the house, and once all the paperwork has been completed, the new owners can move in. The bank, though, needs some guarantee that within the specific time period, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, the money will be eventually repaid, plus interest. And for this, the actual ownership of the house is retained by the bank, so that in the event the person cannot continue repaying the monthly amounts on the loan, the bank steps in, asks the person to leave, and resells the house. If after the 20 years the amount of the original loan has been repaid, then the bank hands back ownership of the house to the owner. This is the concept of collateral, a guarantee that whatever was loaned will be returned. When that happens, the item used for collateral is restored back to the original owner. Just as the person who loaned the money must restore the money in full plus interest, so too the institution that holds the collateral is required to restore the item in the same condition that in which it was received by them. And this is the crux of question number 7. Rashi states that the double Mishkan connected to the word Mashkon, an item taken as collateral, reflects the two Batei HaMikdash that were taken by God as collateral. By introducing the concept of collateral, the implication is that when the item is returned, it was to be returned in the same condition in which it was taken. The reality is, as we have established from the two sources mentioned earlier, that of Noach and his bracha to his two sons, and that of the Urim v'Tumim that was inserted into the Choshen, the Kedusha levels of Beit HaMikdash number 1 was high relative to Beit HaMikdash number 2. As such, Beit HaMikdash number 2 did not fulfill the requirements of collateral, in that the item that was taken as collateral, Beit HaMikdash number 1, was not returned as is to its original source. So with question number 7, we take issue with the very concept that Rashi introduces to justify the double Mishkan, that the Churban of the 2 Batei Mikdash was deemed to be collateral for when the collateral was returned back to the people with Beit HaMikdash number 2, it was not returned in the same condition for when it was taken. And with this we conclude the 7 questions articulated by the Rebbe to Rashi's commentary to Eile Pekudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdut.